Hello again. It is a great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Poul Joachim Stender, who is also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Greek Cultural Institute that we have just founded. Poul Joachim is a priest in the Danish church. He has written several books. He's a popular lecturer around the country and in Greece. For many years, he has guided tours in historical Christian lands, also in Greece, where he also brings groups of Danes to Kardamyli to experience the olive harvest and to enjoy the pleasures of food cooked with olive oil. Poul Joachim is an inhabitant of Kardamyli and has been, for the past 3-4 months, been speaking to a lot of people in Kardamyli that you will share with us. And your talk is entitled Kardamyli as a Time of Gifts.
Ladies and gentlemen, located by the crystal clear waters of the Messenian Bay and shadowed by the great Iquitos mountains, the small village of Kardamyli, where Patrick Leigh Fermor settled during the early 1960s, is not only a hidden pearl within the wilderness of Peloponnese Insula, it is a state of mind. We who frequently explore the secretive beauty of Kardamyli become progressively exposed and seduced by its poetic charm. Resembling a powerful and irresistible drug, Kardamyli draws us to greater extent every year. Just like honeybees circles around a colorful and attractive flower, so does the large number of English inhabitants who are located throughout the region correspondingly gather around the memory of Patrick Leigh Fermor. Some have bought their place of residence in nearby villages as Syria or Stupa. Others have, throughout a period of 50 years, spent the winter season in Kardamyli. What they all have in common is their conversation with Patrick Fermor, who they often refer to as Paddy, our beloved friend. Members of the female sex are without any doubt in love with him. When questioned, they make use of superlative rhetoric and recollects the soul-stirring moments when Fermor, in a mysterious setting, whispered, "Dance with me." Fermor, he loved to dance. Men, on the other hand, are more level-headed with regards to Fermor. They examine and acknowledge him with the deepest respect. In one instance, an 85-year-old Scotchman named Ken, to whom I spoke in November, boldly compared Fermor with the Lord Byron, who significantly advocated the Greek struggle for independence. However, before he could finish his statement, his wife, Brenda, cried out with displeased voice, "Paddy cannot be compared to anyone else. He was exceptional." In that moment, I couldn't help thinking that within her mind, the soft and loving words of Fermor, her very own James Bond, the man of her dream, whispered, "Brenda, dance with me." Within the council chamber of Kardamyli's town hall hangs 3 pictures. One illustrates the prominent painting of Michelangelo, in which God with his finger reaches out to a naked Adam, evoking his soul. The second picture, which is placed in the corner, is an icon of Jesus Christ. And finally, in the center of the longitudinal back wall hangs a portrait of Patrick Leigh Fermor. This surely represents those who have given life to the small village. Through creation, God, Christ, who maintained the condition of life, and Fermor, who with time became a tremendous gift to the village of Kardamyli. No wonder he was accredited the title Honorary Citizens of Kardamyli. In 2011, when hospitalized in Greece, short before he drew his last breath in his homeland, England, the city council handed him the golden keys to the city itself, a final gesture of appreciation from the village of Kardamyli. The commemoration of Patrick Leigh Fermor is currently not a tourist attraction in Kardamyli yet. Norwegian tourists who during the month between May and October occupy the small town are clearly exposed to his many books and biographies which are displayed in the local bookstore. However, having only one single week of vacation forces the activities of drinking ouzo, swimming in the salty blue waters, as well as consuming the divine and juicy lamb chops at Taverna Kikis, where the owners are related to the late Byzantine emperor, to be of much higher importance. I'm quite sure that the majority of Norwegian visitors are not familiar with the secretive and mystifying House of Fermor, which resembles an Italian monastery, located just behind the sandy shores of Kardamyli Beach. It has since the early 1960s, as we heard, housed a hero and a poet. During my last stay in Kardamyli, I questioned the town's youth about Patrick Leigh Fermor. No one knew who he was, despite he throughout World War II had fought alongside their Greek ancestors against the Nazis on the island of Crete, as well as having authored some of the finest, if not the finest, books about their beautiful region. Nevertheless, most of Kardamyli's 200 inhabitants, who are beyond the age of 35, can one way or another give an account of Fermor, and not one of these descriptions includes an unfriendly rhetoric. Vula, keeper of Hotel Vardia, educated his wife in modern Greek. She described his personality and household with a great sense of humor. It didn't bother Fermor when a goat suddenly appeared in his living room or when 20 cats became fellow residents of his mansion. Eva, who owns the local jewelry store, loves to tell the story of the Australian journalist who, during a period of 6 days, wandered the perimeters of Fermor's house, perhaps anticipating his outside walls would collapse like the walls of Jericho, thereby obtaining his long-seeking interview with Fermor. But by some reason, Eva is more amazed by the fact that he never let the hopeful journalist within his home. Maybe she recognizes her own as well that of the city's stubbornness with that of Fermor. Elpida, which means hope in Greek, described with great enthusiasm the many years she cared for Fermor's house and guests, as well as acting as the chef for the whole entire mansion. She indeed lives up to her name, Hope, because she hopes to publish a cookbook containing Fermor's favorite dishes. Only few meters from the church lies a supermarket owned by Eleni and Elias Demetrius, who also are relatives of the last Byzantine emperor. They recount every time Fermor left Kardamyli, he halted his car by our supermarket and said goodbye. In return, we ensured he was accompanied with a bottle of wine during the trip to his next destination. Even my wife, Miriam, who like me has visited Kardamyli the last 30 years, heard different stories about him. On his name day, Fermor invited the residents of Kardamyli to join a ceremony which took place in a small chapel nearby his house, followed by a small reception with appetizers and beverages. The town's female population caroled with unhesitant clarity, while us men saluted Fermor with deep respect every time we drank, and we did that quite often. Returning to Denmark, my wife removed and replaced a photo of me with a picture of her and Fermor. Today, this still stands in the exact same spot, and in the back of my head, I can't help wondering if she, my own wife and beloved companion for the last 40 years, longs for Fermor's soft and gentle whisper, "Dance with me." Why is there a secretive, mysterious, and loving relationship between Fermor and Kardamyli? What caused the common notion that Fermor is a gift for Kardamyli and the other way around? I consider Fermor to be one of our very last heroes. Heroes are unfortunately a dying race. In present day, we simply live for the prospect of surviving. We don't live according to a dream, an idea, a thought, or a vision. And when we die of something, not for something. But Fermor was a hero, and for many reasons. It took great courage and heroism when he, as a young man, wandered through Europe into Greece. He did it without a cell phone, GPS, a sophisticated watch measuring heart rate, body fat, and pulse. Bearing resemblance to a James Bond movie, it also took great courage to kidnap a German general during the Battle of Crete in World War II, later on delivering him to the Allies in North Africa. It took courage when he, in high age, dared to swim the Bosporus Strait. It took courage when he wrote his memorizing and affectionately books combating editors' heartless correction and deadlines. Nevertheless, a combination of these accomplishments does not make Fermor a hero alone. He is firstly a hero because he dared to live his life to the fullest. He wasn't afraid of loving, dancing, singing, smoking, drinking, or eating. Indeed, Fermor served as an example for the rest of us. He was full of dreams and visions. He discarded all logical reasoning and gave way to the powerful affection of poetry and earthly pleasures. He considered his life an experiment. At the present time, no one dares to commit oneself to these principles because we live in an age where mankind is more focused on living a long life instead of a rich, exciting, and memorizing life. The fact that Patrick Leigh Fermor embodied the charisma of Kardamyli can most likely be linked to his heroic history. In the Iliad, Achilles is the first hero to be related to Kardamyli. Considered the best warrior in all of Greece, he fought alongside a massive Greek army during the siege and conquest of Troy. However, Agamemnon from Mycenae, who stole his beloved woman, triggered the great warrior to lay down his arms in anger. In compensation for the theft of this beautiful woman, Agamemnon offered Achilles the village of Kardamili. Nevertheless, Achilles declined, presumably because he was not familiar with the town and its region female eye-catching beauty. Achilles is, however, not the only hero in connection with Kardamili. Sparta is located behind the Greek mountain peak of Ilias on the direct opposite side of Kardamili's Taygetus mountains. When its city, Gition, came under siege, Spartan soldiers were forced to use Kardamili's harbor in its place. Nonetheless, ancient heroes have wandered the streets of Kardamili, heroes and warriors who bravely fought against the Persian Empire throughout the 5th century before Christ. If not for the courageousness and sacrifice of these heroes, European culture today would most likely have been unrecognizable. Throughout the 19th century, heroes are once again present in Kardamili. Located in the center of Kardamili Square stands a black sculpture of Panayotis Tropakis, nicknamed Mursanas, the bulldog, who indeed was a fear-provoking man. When the Turkish forces conquered the Byzantine city of Mistras in 1460, the royal family of Palaiologos was forced to flee. One of the emperor's descendants ended up in Kardamili and birthed the notorious Mursanas, who later on became one of Mani's most influential men. During the early 1820s, Mursanas gathered other powerful leaders from across the region, men like Mauromikalis, Kolokotronis, and Grigorakis. These men would, under normal circumstances, have been engaged in internal conflicts and disputes, but after 400 years of Turkish oppression and domination, the major powers of the European continent had caught an eye on Greece, which thereby generated a Greek sentiment of revolution. On March 21, Mursanas assembled an army and commenced the liberation of Kalamata, capital of Messenia. The city was finally liberated on March 23rd. While other countries celebrate their military victories, Greece, on the other hand, celebrates the birth of their revolutionary struggle. On March 25th, the whole nation gathers in celebration, commemorating the date that led to a free and independent Greece. However, in Kardamili, celebrations are on March 23rd. I once encountered Fermor on 21st of March Square, which is named after the date when Mursanas and his army marched towards Kalamata. The square is located next to Kardamili's church. He was a white-haired, fragile man with lowered back who walked along society's prominent leaders like politicians, the mayor, and some priest. I saw Fermor once again on October 28th during the Oiki Day, which is considered Greece's second national day, where the fight against Mussolini's Italy in World War II was commenced. With every encounter, the same thought came to my mind. Fermor is truly one of Kardamili's many heroes, and perhaps the last. Or is he? Maybe I just forgot another hero, Scotchwoman Brenda, Ken's 87-year-old wife, who suddenly interrupted her husband as he compared Paddy to another individual. About 1 month ago, on a cold December day, where the cold wind and furious waters of the ocean transformed the eternally idyllic landscape into a melancholic abyss, I saw her swimming by the Richard beach. Only heroes would attempt such a dangerous act. The close connection between Fermor and Kardamili are also evident in many other ways. Kardamili is located in an area which have attracted many famous writers. Nikos Kantsatsakis has visited the region, only 7 kilometers south of Kardamili. The small coastal village of Stupa can be found. Kantsatsakis came here to be head of the mine and had thus invited Sorba to help him manage. Sorba became a great inspiration, and their friendship is also portrayed in the book Sorba the Greek. Though I know, and I realize I'm echoing the words of Brenda, Fermor cannot be compared to any other person. He nevertheless reminds me of Sorba, an individual who loved dancing, singing, eating, drinking, and smoking. What characterized both Sorba and Fermor was their common adventurism and view of life. One day, while Sorba was drinking wine, he suddenly voices, "Now whatever is this red water, boss, just tell me. An old stock grow branches, and at first there's nothing but a sour bunch of beets hanging down. Time passes, the sun ripens them, they become as sweet as honey, and then they're called grapes. We trample on them, we extract the juice and put it into cask. It ferments on its own. We open it on the feast day of St. John the Drinker. It's become wine. It's a miracle. You drink the red juice, and lo and behold, your soul grows big, too big for the old carcass. It challenges God to a fight. Now tell me, but how does it happen?" I'm quite sure that Fermor, in a similar rhetoric fashion, would have uttered a corresponding statement about, for example, a good wife from Nemea. I also think Fermor resembles this other story, and I quote from the book, Sorba the Greek. "When going down a slope, Sorba kicked against a stone, which went rolling downhill. He stopped for a moment in amazement, as if he was seeing this astounding spectacle for the first time in his life. He looked at me, and in his look, I discerned faint consternation. 'Boss, did you see that?' he said at last. 'On slopes, stone come to life again.' I said nothing, but I felt a deep joy. This, I thought, is how great visionaries and poets see everything, as if for the first time. Each morning, they see a new world before their eyes. They do not really see it. They create it." Unquote. I often contemplate that Fermor wrote the way he did because he each morning, in the spirit of Sorba, saw a new world before his eyes. And if he didn't see a new world, he created it. Other prominent writers have also lived in Kardamyli. Bruce Chatwin, the great travel writer, settled in Kardamyli from 1985 to 1986, where he during this period wrote Songline, which is about the oldest inhabitants of Australia and their myth and songs. At an age of 48, he died of AIDS. Following his cremation, his wife scattered his ashes around the small chapel in Executive, which is located in the mountains above Kardamyli. The writer Kevin Andrew, who is known for The Flight of Icarus, has also lived in Kardamyli, along with the Swedish author Stefan Stolpe, whose description of the region's landscape are immortalized in numerous different books. The reason I'm mentioning these individuals is because Kardamyli is not only a homestead for heroes like Achilles, the Spartan soldiers, Murzonas, or Fermor, but also that of artists. As a writer, I certainly become more poetic in Kardamyli with its captivating surroundings, not only because of the majestic Te Iquitos mountains, the great olive plains, the deep blue sea and the red sunsets, but because I know that Yannis Ritsas, the great Greek poet, was born just east of Kardamyli, and because I late at night, while sitting with an ouzo at the local taverna, can faintly hear the town's old men singing the text of Ritsas or Elitis to the tunes of Mikis Theodorakis. Fermor's decision to settle in Kardamyli is not only based on its unique history and beauty. The Mani Peninsula, in which Kardamyli is located, is one, I'm sorry to say it, but it is one of Greece's most interesting regions. Its scenery and landscape resemble a harsh, captivating, and beautiful environment. Its panorama spellbinds its visitors to a much larger extent in the rest of Greece. Its warm winds carries the scent of Byzantine memory. But these features does not single-handedly make the Mani Peninsula exceptional. It is rather its inhabitants. They are descendants of the old Spartan warriors and the last emperor of the Byzantine Empire. They are resolute, stubborn, macho, warmongering, and when the region youth complain about their father's decisions, which they very often do, they always add, "What can we do?" is a maniad. Christianity came to Greece along with Constantine the Great in 313, but not as far south as Mani. They first embraced the Christian religion 200 years later, but afterwards they became remarkably devoted to Christianity, and churches and chapels arose in great numbers throughout the region. One of Kardamili's neighboring towns, Proasio, has over 40 churches. The Turkish forces were furthermore not able to fully conquer the Mani Peninsula. They were forced to bribe the Maniads with precious gifts in order to keep them in check. After the War of Independence in 1830, the new government in Athens was forced to deploy troops throughout Mani because its residents did not obey its authority. The notion of vendetta also flourished throughout the first half of the 20th century. The many visible towers and fortress-like buildings tell the stories of how families fought each other. We who know Kardamyli are aware of the fact that these struggles are still ongoing, perhaps not with means of an armed conflict, but instead that of lawyers. In the occasion of death, one can still hear the very old mourning songs and see how the relatives provide the dead with coins as payment for the ferryman to carry the soul of the dead to the river Styx. Christian and heathen tradition are intertwined in a quite beautiful manner, and the old Greek myths still have a very present influence throughout the region to this day. Behind the vast mountains, in the city of Sparta, lived King Menelaus. He was married to the gorgeous and stunning Helen, who was kidnapped to Troy by Prince Paris. In Gideon, located on Mani's eastern coastline, one can visit the island of Crete, where Paris and Helen had their first sexual encounter before sailing for Troy. Her twin brothers, Castor and Pollux, are additionally buried in Kardamili. Throughout Mani's southern point, it is claimed that an opening for Hades' underworld can be found within its barren landscape. Compared to the rest of Greece, food is additional, much better tasting in the region. Vegetables are always fresh, colorful, juicy, and cheap. Its light green olive oil is more peppery and tasteful. The local cheeses have an aromatic consistency and taste. The honey is more sweet and intense, and the famous Mani sausages are thick with meat and spices. According to Fermor's housekeeper and cook, Elpida, Fermor enjoyed a well-prepared meal, and he insisted that the main courses altered for at least 10 days before they could be repeated. Fermor did indeed appreciate the quality of good meal, which is evident in his book, Mani. He writes, one day he's visiting Kalamata, and he writes about this. The stone flags of the water edge, where Joan and Jan Fielding and I sat down to dinner, flung back to the heat like a casserole with the lid off. On a sudden, silent decision, we stepped down fully dressed into the sea, carrying the iron table a few yards out, and then our 3 chairs, on which, up to our waist in cool water, we sat down the nearly laid tabletop, which seemed by magic to be elevated 3 inches above the water. The waiter, arriving a moment later, gazed with surprise at the empty space of the quay, Then, observing us with a quickly masked flicker of pleasure, he stepped unhesitatingly into the sea, advanced waist deep with a butler's gravity, and saying nothing more than dinner time, placed our meal before us, 3 beautiful grilled kefali, piping hot, and with their golden brown scales sparkling. Diverted by the spectacle, the diners on the quay sent us can upon can of racina till the table was crowded. The combination of breathtaking surrounding nature, its history, its proud tradition, a mystifying and secretive mythology, a wind that carries the ancient smell of Byzantine period, food flavored with heavenly aromas, must all together have led Patrick Leigh Fermor to settle in Kardamyli. In Greek mythology, the siren creatures bewitched disorientated sailors with their irresistible and beautiful singing. So does Kardamyli sing and bewitch its visitors. One does not simply choose Kardamyli, Kardamyli chooses you. Scotchwoman Brenda was right. Fermor cannot be compared with any others. But through my point of view, he possessed the adventurous qualities of Sorba, the heroic ventures of Achilles, Mursunas, and Lord Byron, the poetic rhetoric and mindset of Bruce Chatwin and Nikos Kantsatsakis, his abilities to master different languages, both verbally and in writing, reminds me of the oral genius Michael Ventris, who deciphered Linear B, the ancient Cretan script, and who, by the way, learned Swedish in only 14 days. He also resembles the German businessman Heinrich Schliemann, who not only discovered the ancient ruins of Mykene and Troy, but also possessed the ability to acknowledge a language, its culture, and its way of life in a rapidly manner. One question remains. Will the memory of Patrick Leigh Fermor, as well that of his numerous publications, continue to exist in the heart and minds of Kardamyli's residents? Will those visiting Kardamyli seek to walk the footsteps of this great man, this great hero who lived his life to the fullest? Will the coming generation cherish and recite his poetic legacy? Or does his travel book and graceful writing belong to a lost era? I hope this symposium in memory of Fermor will lay the foundation for the coming travel books. In this way, sites as Lonely Planet, TripAdvisor, or Wikipedia will not single-handedly focus on the region's beaches and mountains, but also aspects of a more poetic and sensible mindset. Here's an example between Wikipedia's description of Kardamyli and that of Fermor. Wikipedia states, Kardamyli is a town by the sea 35 kilometers southeast of Kalamata. It is the seat of the municipality of Leftro in the region of Messenia on the Mani Peninsula. The area is filled with beaches. Kardamyli is the departure point of many mountain trails, some of which lead to the peak of Mount Tegitos. Kardamyli is known in the area for having a special good view at Mount Tegitos, etc., etc. Rather boring. This is Fermor's description. Kardamyli was unlike any villages I had seen in Greece. These houses, resembling small castles built of golden stone with medieval-looking pepper pot towers, were topped by the fine church. The mountains rushed down almost to the water's edge with, here and there, among the whitewashed fishermen's houses near the sea, great rustling groves of calamus reached 10 feet high and all swaying together in the slightest whisper of wind. There was sand underfoot and nets were looped from tree to tree. Whitewashed ribbed amphora for oil or wine, almost the size of those stocked up in the palace of Minos, stood by many a doorway, etc. Now, what description do you prefer? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Poul Joachim, for this excellently composed